I'm going to be talking about the rise of Theodore Roosevelt. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It was written by Edmund Morris. I listened to it on Audible. It's about 27 hours long. It's kind of a hefty one. It's published in 1979, so it's about 41 years old, 42 years old now at this point. First, I want to talk about the narration that he goes and does. The narrator did a great job. I'm going to give him a 5 out of 5. He was dynamic with intonation, and he uses the emotion that the writer created to go and bring out for you to go and listen to. So I'm kind of picky about narrators. I either get really into it, or like they're just gonna. It could be a great book, but the narrator's not there. It's gonna just ruin it for me. So I like him. He did a great job. He told the story, and he brought it to life as well. So now this book is going to cover his birth to his presidency and everything in between. If you know anything about Teddy Roosevelt, is that it's he did a lot of stuff. He just did so much stuff all the time. Highly impressive man. So he's one of the most fascinating people ever, and he's one of my personal heroes. If I could be anything like Teddy Roosevelt, I would have lived a good life. So my favorite chapters were while he was in the Wild West, herding the cattle and hunting, and while he was a police commissioner. So while he was fairly young in his 20s, he went out to the West purely for the adventure. He was kind of driven out there a little bit. He needed to get away from the East Coast. He was like, let's go to the West. So you hear about him hunting big game and about him herding cattle. I think a part of him really needs to figure out his, so he grew up in the Ivy League, and he grew up upper class citizen on the East Coast. And he's like, well, I've kind of succeeded here, but there's all these other macho men over here in the West. I wonder if I can go and be like them for a while. Can I measure up to them? So he goes to the West, and he does. He measures up greatly to them, and he earns their respect by working incredibly hard and just killing it everywhere, figuratively and literally. Like I said, he was a big game hunter for a while. Now, like I said, the other favorite part was him as a police commissioner. And I really didn't know what that was until, I don't know, actually when I read this book, I didn't realize there was a police commissioner position. It's usually only found in large cities. Usually, I'm familiar with police chief, he's in charge of it, but police commissioner is a civilian in charge of the police force, which is what Teddy Roosevelt was. So there's stories of him. There was a lot of talk about corruption in the police force, and it was him. This was New York, so it's New York. There's going to be plus corruption in police. It's just how it is. But Teddy Roosevelt wanted to do something about it, just going to make it a little bit better. So there's stories of him walking around midnight, and there'd be police officers falling asleep. They'd be doing one thing or another. There's a story of him walking in on a police officer eating clams just at a restaurant, not really doing actual police work, but he's like, forget this, I'm going to go eat clams for a while, which is what they used to do back in the day, I guess. And so he gets there, and he's like, what are you doing there, officer? And the officer is like, forget you, why are you talking to me? I'm a cop, you can't talk to me like that. And he's like, well, I'm your police commissioner, so I can talk to you however I want. So, and then the officer is like, well, I guess you can, just go and sprints out of there. So there's stories of that, him walking around at night, and eventually shaped everything up because he kept catching officers being negligent with their duties. He would, of course, find the good officers that is the heart and soul of this country, of the good police officers, and he's like, yep, you're doing a great job, I'm going to promote you. So yeah, he spoke softly and carried a large stick, which is an African proverb, but it made so much more famous by Teddy Roosevelt. So now, the one thing I really like about the author is how they brought out his one of his bravery to pursue mischief. And it's kind of weird to put it that way, be brave to pursue mischief. But he did. He walked around at night in New York where there's one criminals and two negligent cops that had pretty bad reputation about them, and he just went and messed with them because he was brave and because he had that aspect of mischief, of just a little bit of playfulness as he goes into there. And same thing with the West as well. He kind of always had the act of tenacity and mischief in his ranching, and he was also a deputy as well, a deputized person. And so when following out that aspect, he was just funny about that. He had a great time being both those things. Something else is my only problem with the book was that it was so long. Now, like I said, I listened to this book. It was on the Audible, and that's the only way I can really get through these really long books. Because if it's in physical form, it's gonna be lost in my bookshelf forever. But if I go and put my headphones in, turn on at work, I could go and crank through it. And now, really, it's not Teddy Roosevelt's fault. The book would be shorter if he was less interesting. Now, the author is called Edmund Morris. So he's written this book. He's written another book called Theodore Rex, and another one called Colonel Roosevelt, which is about his time as a Rough Rider. And I do have Theodore Rex in my library, probably what I'm going to listen to next. So I'm assuming that's about his presidency. This, once again, the book only lasts goes from his birth to his presidency, but nothing actual about his presidency. It kind of stops right there. The book does kind of get bogged down 3/4 through. There's a lot of about him in the legal system, about him suing people, being sued, or not actually, no, he wasn't sued. He was fighting legal battles against the guy in charge of the post office about corruption charges. So there was a lot of legality, and while it was interesting, it's like, I get the post office was also corrupt, or they were doing things not entirely above the board. And I'm like, it's just not. I'll get to the next part. So, the most interesting thing I learned about this book is that Teddy Roosevelt considered hunting an act of preservation, which didn't make sense to me. Because he went and shot things, and then he also autopsied them as well. He learned how to go and do taxidermy. A little macabre for my taste, but what else are you going to do in the 1800s, 1900s? Might as well learn how to taxidermy. So, but he really considered, one, he created the national parks. Obviously a big deal, great thing that he did that. And he considered hunting a part of preservation as well, because the more you hunted, the more you got to know the animal, and you got to know what it required, what was challenges it was facing, and the beauty of the animal. Ideally, the better version of that is being a photographer. Instead of shooting with a bullet, you shoot with a picture. But I'm from Indiana, lots of deer, so hunting deer is an act of preservation. Go cut down that population, keep the rest of the ecosystem in check, or else they'll just run rampant and eat everything and ruin other parts. So yeah, it kind of opened my mind about that. Another step for that. So that's my review of The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. The only reason I didn't get a 10 out of 10 was that it was just so long and got bogged down a little bit. And while this is the second time I've reviewed a biography, just not a huge biography guy. I'm really interested in these particular people, but it's still a biography. You can always dig something up, you can always learn something more. So it's kind of another never-ending subject. But yeah, that's what I've got. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.